Well, I want to welcome you back to our series here on internal family systems. Our title has been Working with Your Emotional Parts. So we're going to continue that discussion today about what emotional parts we have and how we can deal with them better. Today, we're going to talk specifically about parts and relationships, emotional parts of us and relationships. And we're going to specifically talk about something called loops. So what are loops about? Well, here we see that when we interact with other people, our emotional parts often enter into the living room. And when I talk about the living room, I'm talking about your consciousness. You become conscious of different parts of you when you're talking with somebody. It might be anger, it might be love, it might be joy, it might be contentment, it might be frustration. Each of those are parts, and they kind of emerge up into your living room when you're interacting with another person. Certain parts are called up into the living room of our lives more regularly than others. And often in our dealings with other people, there's a repetitive process or a loop that can occur with the same person if we have to interact with them a lot, or with different people, it might be the same loop that we might have with different people. And this can be either positive or negative. So in this case, what might come up on the top are protector parts of us that are designed to protect us from other people when we feel threatened. Or below, you see some people that can come up into the living room. These are sort of the judges and critics that we have inside of us that can become critical of other people or become critical of ourselves in terms of how we're interacting with other people. Here's an example of a parent and a child. So here we have a rule has been broken by the adolescent, and then the parents' judging parts begin to lecture the young person, and then the child's rebellious part rises up, and then comes a sullen attitude, and then the parents' judging part becomes even more moralistic because of what their adolescent is doing. This is a very predictable pattern that's happened with parents and children since the beginning of time, I'm sure. The rebel and the moralistic parts in the parent and the child are ready for action because they've been through this loop before. So as soon as the mom comes into the room, the adolescent, his rebel part is ready to go, and the mom's moralistic part is ready to go and ready for action. And there's the more that goes on here. So the more scolding from the mom, the more resistance we're going to get from the child. And so it's going to create a loop or interpersonal loop, something that they've been through before, something that they'll be going through again, because it's a pattern in this relationship. We also will see this at work, in our work lives. The boss, represented here by the bullhorn, the boss can evoke a rebel part inside of us, or a defender part where we feel like we have to defend ourselves. Or in this case, I also showed a picture here of an angry part. We can become angry as something that our boss does or says. The rebel or defender or angry part of us in us as the worker can then intimidate or upset the boss, and the boss can now bring out his defender parts. And so we can see, again, this will create a loop that can just continue on over and over and over in this relationship. This happens a lot with couples, and this is the toughest thing that I found in trying to work with couples as a counselor myself, are these loops. One marriage counselor called it the crazy cycle. And here's the crazy cycle as he describes it. At the top, you see that the husband, he is interacting with his wife without any love. So he's not expressing love in a given situation. And so it says toward the right of that she reacts, and then we go down, she acts without respect, or she reacts without respect. So in other words, she withholds respect from her husband. Why? Because she's not feeling loved. So without that respect, he reacts on the left side of the diagram without love. And so the whole thing goes on like that. Or it could start with the wife withholding respect from her husband. And so he reacts without love, and then she reacts without respect. And it's the crazy cycle. And we can see this cycle takes us downward, not upward. It takes us down. Well, it escalates up, but it takes us down, and it brings down the relationship. And there's an encouraging thing about this, but there's also a discouraging thing about this. I call it the encouraging, discouraging stat. Researchers have proven that 75% or so of couples arguments are unsolvable. And there's a reason for that, is because when you marry someone, you marry a set of perpetual problems. That is, you're deciding when you get married, and sometimes you don't know this. You're deciding to marry a set of perpetual problems. There are going to be some problems that you're going to have over and over and over in the particular marriage if you marry that person. Now, the thing is, if you marry someone else, you're going to have another set of perpetual problems. They'll be probably just as bad as the ones that you've chosen. But the idea is, it doesn't matter who you're going to be with, you're going to have a set of perpetual problems. And up to 75% or more of the problems that we have are unsolvable. And the reason they're unsolvable is because of gender differences, family background differences, and I could go on and on. There's literally hundreds of variables. So what do we have to do then? We have to solve the solvable problems. So if we don't have a budget, well, we can solve that. We can put together a budget. But if one of us is a saver and one of us is a spender, that's going to keep coming up over and over again, right? So we have to solve the solvable. We have to put together a budget, and we have to learn how to talk about the things that can't be solved. The fact that one of us is a spender and one of us is a saver. We have to try to manage those conflicts without gridlock, and trying to get rid of gridlock in the relationship so that things can move forward. We know that we're going to have these problems and that they're going to come up from time to time. And also, repairing bad conversations is also a good skill to have. If you have 100 bad conversations and arguments, but you repair each one of them, then you're going to be okay. So what I encourage people to do is to know your parts better, understand what your parts are better, understand what it is when you feel someone tugging on your rope. What is that? What are they tugging on? What is that part that is emerging? Is it a protector part? Is it an anxious part? Is it an angry part? What is it? Pause long enough to access your spirit-led self. As Christians, each one of us has the Spirit of God living inside of us. And in the midst of the fray, in the midst of that tug of war, we need to be able to access the Holy Spirit so He can guide us in these relationships. We need to breathe. You know, a lot of times we're not regulating our breathing. We're getting anxious and we're breathing very shallow. And we also need to pray. We need God's help in these relationships. And also, going back to the crazy cycle, if you're in a loop with somebody, I would encourage you to give love and give respect. Those are the two things that if you input into a conversation or a relationship is bound to put you into a different cycle than the crazy cycle, a better cycle, a cycle that you want to be in. I want to tell you about a 10-year loop that I had with some people in my life, and it was broken in one day. And I want to give you the script that got me out of that loop with this person or these two people. And because loops often depend on scripts, right? If I'm in a loop with somebody, that means I need to read my script and I need to play my part in this relationship. And my script says I say these things or I do these things. And your script says you do these things and you say these things. And we keep doing it over and over and over again. So what I want to show you here is how to flip the script, how to create a different interaction. And if you have a pen and paper, I would encourage you to write this down, because this could literally save some of your relationships. The first thing is to do for you is to listen to what the other person is saying. Okay. Turn off the what am I going to say next part of your brain and listen to what that other person is saying. Listen intently to what they're saying. Look them in the eye. Give them body language like you're listening to what they're saying. And listen as closely as you can. And the reason we're listening here is going to the second part here is to understand. I want to understand where this other person is coming from. I want to understand why they're saying what they're saying. And I can probably guess that there's something going on below the surface for them. Yes, they're saying words to me and they're telling me that they have this opinion or this thought or whatever, but there's probably something underneath that. And I'm trying to get to understand this person better. So I'm listening to them. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from. In this case, questions can be helpful. Are you trying to say this? Is this what you're trying to say? and trying to clarify what the person is communicating to you can be really helpful under this understanding part. But you really have to try to set your heart that your heart wants to seek to first understand what the other person is saying before you say anything about what you think about it. It's really an attitudinal thing here. I want to understand you. And then the third thing is to validate their feelings. So, and to validate someone's feelings, you do not have to agree with those feelings. If that other person is telling me that I have done something that has hurt them, I don't have to agree with them in order to validate their feelings. It doesn't cost me anything to say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. It doesn't cost me anything to say, I can see how for you, you might feel that way. I can say that and I don't have to agree with them, but I can let them know it's okay for them to have these feelings, that I understand there's a reason they have these feelings. They have interacted with other people in the past, and maybe I've touched a sore spot on them. I've touched a part of them that has now emerged into the living room of their lives, and that is overwhelming them. And I can validate that and say, I can see how upsetting this is to you. When you do that, I almost 9 out of 10 times, I feel like most people calm down there. They've been listened to, they have been understood, and you have validated their feelings. Then you can move on to the third thing, which is to resolve the situation. In some cases, it may be we decide that we're going to disagree about this, or it may be that we say, next time something like this happens, here's how I'll approach it. Is that okay with you? And we try to resolve the thing that happened, or if we need to say I'm sorry, if we need to take a responsibility and our part of it. This acrostic, which is easy to remember because it's called LUVR, LUVR, listen, understand, validate, and resolve. This is something that you can easily remember and memorize to help get you out of these loops that you have been in with some of these relationships. If you want to join us live for these discussions that we have, we'll be taking a break for the next 6 weeks, but after that, we'll probably pick back up. You can go to meetup.com/check your compass. That's meetup.com/check your compass, or you can check out our videos that we upload from time to time on YouTube and Facebook. I want to acknowledge that some of the ideas today were drawn from a book by Tom Holmes and Lori Holmes, along with one of the illustrations today that we showed was by Sharon Eckstein. Thanks for joining us.